Good morning. I'll call the meeting of the Judicial Selection Advisory Board to order now, and we'll begin with the roll call. Lauren, can you do that, or shall we just read off? Okay.
Carlos Rascon.
Peg Stebley.
Diane Johnson.
Don Taylor.
Dave Cunanan.
Alistair Adele.
Thank you. On our agenda is approval of minutes, but we're going to postpone that item until our next meeting. Let me begin with just an overview of our interview process. We'll begin this morning with a call to the public. After that, we will proceed to review our own respective due diligence on the candidates before we begin to interview them in the morning session. We'll do the due diligence for those candidates in the morning, and we will expect to review our due diligence for the afternoon candidates during our lunch break. After we complete our due diligence session this morning, we will retire very briefly to executive session to settle on the questions that we will ask each of the candidates. During the day, and by a majority vote, we may go into other executive sessions on motion by a member of the board who believes it's necessary to promote a full and frank discussion of the candidates. I need to admonish those who are present and those who are watching. For fairness' sake, please do not disclose the interview questions or any candidates' answers to the questions to candidates who have not yet interviewed. We ask the same questions to all of the candidates, and it would give an undue advantage to those later in the day if they get word of what we are asking. So with that said, next I need to ask you under our rules, members of the board, do any of you have any existing relationships with any of the candidates who are going to be interviewed today?
Yes, Your Honor, I do.
And those are?
Your Honor, I'm going to go in order of our interview schedule for ease of use, if that's all right. David Allen, I worked with him at the county attorney's office and hired him at the Department of Transportation and have remained somewhat socially connected with him since that time. Frankie Jones, we worked together at the county attorney's office previously. She also supervised me for about 2 months. Kathy Lemke, I've known her through being a fellow prosecutor and knew her socially a bit, but it's been a few years since she and I have been connected. And James Tinker and Anna Sanchez, I had cases against them as opposing counsel when I was a prosecutor.
Judge?
Hi. Yes. So in terms of people who I have, I guess I wouldn't call them relationships, but I have knowledge of these people either professionally or through the bar or through my private practice or my time on the bench. So just as in a list, I have Tom Peris Condole, Tina Solomon, Kathleen Carey, Evelyn Hernandez, Mr. Scarduzio, Frankie Jones, Mr. Smith, Miss Bastian, Mr. Tinker, and Miss Lemke. They have either appeared in front of me, I have either worked with them, or I know them on a social basis in various capacities. Nothing to the extent where I believe that I'd have to recuse myself, but I do know them through that capacity. A lot of them appear in front of me in court, either in Superior Court or through other judicial functions. Also, when I was in private practice, I worked in the city of Phoenix as a defense attorney, so I know a lot of them through that as well as when I was a defense attorney, they would also appear in Superior Court, so through those functions and as a prosecutor.
All right, thank you. Judge?
So 4 of the candidates are people who were colleagues of mine when I worked at the Phoenix City Prosecutor's office many years ago. That's Kathy Lemke, Bob Smith, James Tinker, and Tina Solomon. And then one of the candidates, Mr. Tom Scarduzio, is currently works as a pro tem judge in the Phoenix Municipal Court. So those are the relationships that I have.
All right, thank you.
Judge, the person I know on this list is Bob Smith, who was a classmate of mine in law school and a friend ever since. Thomas Peris Condole, I do not know personally, but his brother was also a classmate of mine in law school.
All right. Mr. Tebley.
None.
Mr. Rascone.
Likewise, none.
And I have none as well. All right. So, this is the time in our agenda when we welcome comments from the public. I'd ask those who are present to give comment to limit their comments to no more than 2 minutes. Is there a person here to speak to us? Come on up. There's a podium here to your left. The microphone all ready for you. Well, nearly ready for you.
Yeah, I probably need that. I'm going to read a brief written statement that I've prepared. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Maria Hodge, and I'm here to show my support for Judge David Allen to fill the vacancy on the Phoenix Municipal Court. As a case management specialist for the Executive Hearing Office, I have had the pleasure of working with Judge Allen. Based on our daily interactions, I am confident that he is highly qualified for the position. Judge Allen is known throughout our office as an individual of exceptional character. He is always direct about work-related matters and communicates effectively in a way that is considerate of others. Judge Allen also takes time to build personal relationships with his coworkers, which creates a positive work environment. As his schedule allows, he will come around the office to speak to everyone. With his regular visits and communications, he exhibits an exceptional level of care and empathy, which is also a key component in his ability to act fairly and with conviction as judge. He takes the time to consider the ramifications of his rulings and makes his decisions with the community in mind. Overall, Judge Allen has been delightful to work with. He is patient and friendly while maintaining a professional demeanor and has clear passion for his work. For these reasons, I believe that Judge Allen will be a great addition if appointed to the Phoenix Municipal Court. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing the outcome of today's proceedings.
Thank you, Ms. Hodge.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to us? Seeing no one else, we'll proceed now to our respective reports on our due diligence of the candidates. Each one of us has been delegated one or two or three of the candidates to inquire into, and we'll begin those reports right now. The first candidate who we will hear from is Thomas Peris Condole, and I have been delegated the privilege of looking into his background. Mr. Peris Condole is a 1995 law school grad of Washburn University. Began his career as a city prosecutor in Flagstaff and Scottsdale, and since then has been both a private prosecutor for various towns in the community, cities in the community, and has been a public defender as well in various towns and cities in the community. I heard from several folks who he identified as references, as adversaries, or as judges before whom he's practiced. His old friends, not surprisingly, think he's wonderful. I hope all of our friends do. They called him ethical, professional, hardworking, even-tempered, detail-oriented, competent, even-keeled. The court administrator of the Consolidated Cave Creek and Carefree Courts called him a perfectionist, compassionate, always maintains his composure even when faced with irate defendants. An adversary said he's worked adverse to Mr. Peris Condole on opposite side of cases calls him for 11 years. He says he's very competent, very level-headed. Exemplary knowledge of both prosecution and defense work. Another adversary says he can think of no finer addition to the Phoenix court bench than Mr. Peris Condole. Calls him a great lawyer who cares deeply about the job that he does. Another adversary says he was a public defender against Mr. Peris Condole, who was a prosecutor, one of the most ethical, conscientious, knowledgeable prosecutors he's ever encountered, always prepared, always treated me with respect and dignity, always treated everyone in the courtroom with respect and dignity. Equally professional and ethical as a defense lawyer, as a prosecutor. Judges before whom he has practiced say that he has a perfect temperament for the bench, substantial experience from both sides, very patient, integrity beyond reports. He's going to make a very tremendous city court judge, says one. Yeah, there we go. So that is my report on Mr. Peris Condole. Questions or comments about him? Okay, who did we have reporting on Mr. Allen?
Judge, I had Mr. David J. Allen II. It was a pleasure to conduct due diligence on Mr. Allen. He's currently the administrative law judge at the Arizona Department of Transportation. Over the course of the last 2 months, I believe he received at least 15 letters of recommendation, which have been forwarded to the board. And I just want to touch on some of the themes as I discussed with some of the folks that have written letters of recommendation, to include Ms. Hodge. I had a pleasure of meeting with her, so thank you. I guess the best theme that came out in this process was his fairness and his ability to communicate with all people. And I wanted to just read one portion because I think the letters of recommendation highlight the fact that Mr. Allen has the ability to balance his professional knowledge with his personal skills. And this particular piece comes from Adam Susser, which I also was able to speak with. David has a welcoming and affable nature. Those in his courtroom feel that they are treated with respect by someone who can understand their situation while still adhering to the law and applying it in an even-handed manner. His communication and listening skills are peerless, arguably two of the judge's most important characteristics. And I just wanted to highlight that as a theme that came out in each one of those letters of recommendation. He started his law career in 2004, and he's a graduate of the, I believe, the Arizona Law School. But overall, I also was able to talk to Riley Carlack in Applewhite, I believe, and confirmed his previous engagements with a private sector practice as well. Overall, it was a good experience. It was a pleasure to review his package.
Thank you. After talking to Mr. Allen, we'll talk to Michelle Liu Bang, who was delegated to look into her background. Microphone. Microphone, please.
My apologies. I'm still learning the mechanics of this. Your Honor, I was delegated the responsibility of doing Judge Liu Bang's due diligence process. She is a 1985 graduate of ASU Law, and she has had quite a long tenure career as a judge, and most recently in Mesa, where she has recently retired, but has also come back to work for them, and I spoke with their presiding judge. She's actually taking on a very unique experience, and they have confidence in her to do so, to take on a specialty court. She's learning the mechanics of that. I also sent on to the committee through our staff the written responses that I had received, and I believe the entire board should have those in front of them. I also had the pleasure of speaking with some of her former colleagues that worked with her through the Judicial College, and she has quite a lot of experience there, taking on leadership roles to help train new judges, to mentor new judges, but also set the curriculum for what the judges in our limited court jurisdictions need to be knowing so they can be successful. I spoke with Paul Julian over there, so I think we're all familiar with, and his comments about Judge Liu Bang were glowing, quite frankly. He's known her for quite some time, and to use his words, he believes that she is the model for what the knowledge of the law should be. She combines super intellect and emotional intelligence. And he said, given the fact that he's been, with a lot of judges over his time, he has absolute confidence that she would do a good job here. Your Honor, in addition, other than that, I don't really have any other main comments at this point, but I would invite any other questions or comments about the process I had on her. It was a pleasure to review her application.
Thank you. Bob Smith, we'll talk to after that. Mr. Stebley.
I vetted Bob Smith. He's been for 24 years, he's been with the City of Phoenix Prosecutor's Office. I reached out to all of the references. 3 of them did not respond, and the ones that did responded enthusiastically. So I must have missed connections and phone calls with the other 3. All those 3 of them were all under personal references. All of his adversaries responded. I can mention some of the things they said. He's a worthy and professional opponent. He's a perfect has a perfect demeanor to be a judge. He's patient, kind, good temperament, all the adjectives you might expect. What was interesting, though, is 2 other judges, Judge Frank Dominguez and Judge Kevin Kane, went out of their way to even write emails, and that was kind of impressive. Judge Kevin Kane, who was on the Phoenix court for quite a while, he said Bob has a sense of fairness and perspective that puts him above others. I thought that was quite telling. And then I want to read something from an email. Then he went on to write an email. So I both the phone and email. Most any lawyer can be trained on the mechanics of being a judge, but Bob has that innate sense of justice and empathy that cannot be taught, and which is essential to be an outstanding jurist.
Thank you. The next candidate we will interview is Kristen Bell, and I had the honor of looking into Mr. Bell. He's one of our younger applicants. He graduated from Seton Hall Law School in 2005, became an assistant attorney general in Arizona, and served there for 5 years before moving to the city of Phoenix, where he became a prosecutor for the city in 2011. So he's been a prosecutor at 2 levels, for the AG and both for the city of Phoenix. I heard from a number of people about Mr. Bell, who praised him, who praised his integrity, his high standards of right and wrong, the fact that he's a patient person. He's a very good listener, people said. I talked to some of his adversaries. One said he's always conducted himself according to the highest standard, beyond upholding the role of a prosecutor. There have been multiple times, this one adversary said, where Mr. Bell worked with him to come up with solutions that were outside of the normal way that a case would normally get resolved, but it it was resolved in the interest of justice. He's committed and dedicated. This one defender said, I know I need to prepare better when I'm up against Mr. Bell on the other side because he is so good. He's been called an independent thinker, a true professional, even-handed temperament. I heard from a couple of judges about him. Judge Hinsey said that he encouraged Mr. Bell to apply for this appointment. That judge says that Mr. Bell is articulate and smart, listens to people, knows when to hold his ground, patient, not overly stern, really cares about what he does. Another judge that he appeared before a few years ago when he was an assistant attorney general said he was always well prepared and professional. His trial skills, according to this judge, were excellent. This judge thinks that Mr. Bell would make an excellent judge for us. And finally, I spoke to one other Superior Court judge about Mr. Bell, who said that she's known him for about a decade, and has watched him develop over the years. And she says he is now ready, in her belief, to take on the challenges of being a City of Phoenix judge. So that's the conclusion of my report about Mr. Bell. Who is detailed to talk about Kathleen Carey?
That's me. So Kathleen Carey is a solo practitioner. She's been in private practice since 2005. She's a 1999 graduate of the ASU Law School. I reached out to all of her references and was able to make contact with 4 of them, so let me go through those. The first was a good friend of hers, Chris Hines, who she met in the 70s when their husbands were stationed in the military in Turkey, and they've been good friends ever since. She said she's very intelligent, knows the law very well. She said she is whole hog into the law, and she was very concerned that she wasn't a lawyer and didn't know she was giving the right kind of evaluation. And I said, well, that's exactly what we wanted to hear from non-lawyers, and so I really appreciated her comments. The next person I spoke to is a friend of hers, Ricky Gray, who worked with Kathleen's husband. She said she's been very helpful to him, very fair, very reasonable, and Kathleen is a frequent volunteer. The next person I spoke to was Mario Uritia, sorry Mario if I'm getting your name wrong, who was opposing counsel. I find the opposing counsel to be very helpful in terms of judging temperament and other issues with folks who want to be on the bench. He has said very nice things about Kathleen. He said that they had been adverse to each other in many cases over the past 10 years, that she's tried many DUI cases, is always very up to date on the law, and is a very good advocate for her clients. She's, as he put it, firm but professional. And then he probably gave her the best compliment of all and said that he would hire her if he was ever in trouble. The last person I spoke to was Judge James Hernandez, who said he had worked with Kathleen for years when they were both court-appointed attorneys, that she regularly appears before him, and said that she does a very good job and goes the extra mile.
Thank you. Who was reporting on Frankie Jones?
I had Frankie Jones. Ms. Jones has been with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office since 1998. Good background. All of our adversaries got back in touch with me via email or phone call. They all said outstanding things. You know, very pleasant to work with, a calm demeanor. One of the ones that was most interesting, though, was an unsolicited email I got and phone call from Harriet Burnick. She worked with Frankie and really feels that she would be an outstanding jurist. All in all, the adjective that showed up the most times with Miss Jones, her intelligence, sound judgment. Just about everybody, not everybody, but most of them had those comments on her.
Thank you. And the final interview of this morning will be with Evelyn Hernandez.
Judge, I had due diligence on Evelyn Hernandez. I won't go over the packet with you, which you've previously got regarding her experience. Her latest placement appointment is with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, and she handles a specific type of caseload out of the Fight Bureau, which is just a little more specific areas. Fight, F-I-T-E. I did my due diligence a little bit. I did contact the references. I also sent an email out to my bench and got input from them regarding if they had any input regarding either the two people that I did my due diligence on. I did get multiple emails from members of my bench regarding Ms. Hernandez, all of them positive.
You're on the Superior Court.
That's correct. It's the Maricopa County Superior Court. And they indicated that they had her here in front of them on various occasions in various capacities. They were always very impressed with her preparedness, her ability to present her case, as well as her understanding of the case. Sometimes based upon those cases, it can get a little difficult with emotion in terms of victim input and the cases themselves, and they always indicated that she handled that in a very appropriate and in a manner that inspired justice. Specifically, Judge Corey indicated that he had her regarding some JTOP issues, which are juvenile offenders. It's a specialized treatment program for juvenile offenders. And in that capacity, it's just more of a therapeutic court for a juvenile offender. And she was able to grasp those issues and craft her plea agreements and her cases in a way that was in a more of a benefit for the program, because that is a little different community than we normally see in the Superior Court. So he also had high recommendations for her, and generally speaking, most of them who did that. In terms of the recommendations, she, like one of the other previous candidates, had a lot of longtime friends who were very much in favor of her, which again is, I guess, a good sign that they are still her friends and they still support her. Some of those in the legal community, some of them not. But generally speaking, all of those individuals believe that she would be a good judicial candidate based upon her temperament, her experience, and her ability to deal with the issues that have in front of her. They always found her very well balanced and someone that could be fair and impartial.
All right. Thank you. Do any of the members of the board have anything to add or to elaborate on the reports that we've heard? Anything to say before we move on?
I might add one thing about Frankie
Sebley?
Jones. I got an email from Scott Bales, the Chief Justice of the Arizona Superior Court, Supreme Court, I'm sorry. He says she has a very articulate...
This is Miss
Jones.
Jones.
Yeah. She has an articulate voice for our judicial system. I thought that was interesting, which means she does a lot of extracurricular work, and she's become quite a recognized speaker at some of these committees and things. Based on that, I think she'd be a good ambassador for our court.
Thank you. I'm informed that we have another individual who would like to make a public comment, and since we haven't begun the interviews, we'll be happy to accommodate you, sir. If you'd step forward, there's a microphone to your left.
Good morning to the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to come and speak. I was told that I'm a little bit late, but thanks again for giving me a chance to come and speak on behalf of a dear friend. I'm here to make comments on behalf of David Allen, who's a candidate. I've known David Allen since approximately about 2008.
Your name, sir?
I'm sorry, my name is Daniel Ortega III. I'm actually here to speak on behalf of myself and my wife, who are both very good friends of David.
Thank you.
So again, I've known David for about 10 years. I met him through my wife. She was a deputy county attorney with the county attorney's office for about 6 years. That's where she met David, and I met David through her. So I think it's important for me first to speak on her behalf. There was a few things she wanted me to share with you about her professional relationship with David. And that's that, first, yes, they met at the Deputy County Attorney's Office, as Deputy County Attorneys at the County Attorney's Office, and in the Fraud and Identity Theft Bureau. As you guys may be aware, that area of the County Attorney's Office deals with a lot of document crimes. And so I know that the mounds and mounds of paperwork that Mr. Allen is probably going to be dealing with if he is selected as a judge is going to translate very well onto the bench. Not only that, both my wife and I are aware that he's held judicial positions both with the administrative office of the Department of Transportation as well as the City of Tempe. So I think that should bode to the committee that he does have the skills and expertise to hit the ground running if and when you guys do appoint him to the bench. She also wanted me to communicate to him that, to you, that he is probably one of the most dedicated and hardest working individuals that she's had the chance to share a professional relationship with. She wanted me to mention that it's almost to a fault that he allows himself to be consumed by his work, which does allow other areas of his life to suffer. But I don't mean to highlight that as a flaw, but more as a really good quality of Mr. Allen's. Speaking for myself, I'd like to share something about David that's more on a personal level, because being that his name is in front of you guys right now, I'm sure you guys agree that he has all the professional accolades to do this job. But nonetheless, one of the things that David has done for my wife and I is, quite frankly, he was there at the very beginning of our marriage. He served as the officiant at our wedding. And we chose to put him in that position because of the friendship that we've developed with him over the years. And he holds a very dear place in the hearts of my wife and I. Our friendship has really developed, and I can say that David Allen is probably one of the most kindest individuals that I've met and I've had the honor of calling a friend. I don't think in any of our 10 years of friendship that he has ever really, I've never seen him get worked up, which I think really goes to the temperament that you guys are looking for a judicial nominee. He's very level-headed. He keeps his composure. Even in the heated debate that he and I often engage in, and it's been a conflict in our relationship, but we've managed to work through, and that's the fact that, well, he believes Star Trek is better, and I myself love Star Wars, and I think that, nonetheless, that's something we've managed to work through. But in any case, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. All right. This is the time in our agenda where we will go into executive session now to discuss the questions that we will ask each of the candidates. May I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor of going into executive session now to discuss the questions to be asked of the candidates, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.